Welcome to the Aria. It's fascinating that over 90% of our viewers connect deeply with our videos, yet choose not to subscribe. Speech Balloon if you've just joined us. Welcome to a place where every story is a journey through hidden truths, unspoken emotions, and endings that leave you breathless. Backhand index pointing right, still watching but haven't subscribed yet? Now's your moment. Hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next will pull you in deeper than you ever expected. Bell, and don't forget to tap the bell, so you'll never miss the next chapter that just might change everything. Right arrow, one click. One emotional journey. Come with us. In a heartbeat, you can help us create even more remarkable content just for you. The air crackled with tension, wrapping around me like a second skin. The pounding of my heart resonated in my ears, a relentless reminder of the choice that awaited me. Let us embark on our journey. It began on a warm evening in Paris, right after the final round of trade negotiations ended. The city was shrouded in a calm quiet, but inside, chaos consumed me. When Ethan moved into the guest room, I told myself it was temporary. David, my husband of 13 years, had just left for a 2-week business trip in Chicago. He barely looked up from his phone as he wheeled his suitcase out the door, only pausing to peck my cheek in a gesture that felt more habitual than affectionate. "Ethan should be here by dinner," he said, sliding into the car. "He just needs a place to crash for a few days." And just like that, David was gone. The house suddenly felt bigger than it needed to be. Echoey. Silent. By 6:30 that evening, Ethan was here. He arrived in an old gray sedan, wearing a denim jacket over a black hoodie, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. I watched from the kitchen window as he stepped out, brushed the wind from his face, and looked up at the house like it held more memories than it should. It had been years since he stayed with us, years since we were all different people. When I opened the door, he gave me that soft, sideways smile I remembered from long ago. "Hey, Claire," he said, voice warm. "Thanks for letting me crash here." "Of course. Your family." I hated how forced that word sounded coming out of my mouth. Dinner was quiet. Ethan helped set the table without asking. He poured wine without offering first, but I didn't stop him. He asked about my work, how my studio classes were going, if I'd finished that mural I mentioned in last year's Christmas card. David never asked those kinds of things anymore. It was unsettling how easily Ethan made the house feel less cold. Not louder, just occupied. Awake. After dinner, he offered to do the dishes. I refused. Then I accepted. Then we both laughed at the awkward back and forth. "It's okay," he said. "Let me do something useful while I'm here." The clink of glass against porcelain filled the kitchen while I wiped the counter next to him. The silence between us didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt oddly peaceful. "So, how are you and David?" he asked casually. I paused for a second too long. "Fine," I said. "Busy?" "Yeah." He always was a little allergic to stillness. I didn't reply, but something about that line stayed with me. The next morning, I found Ethan in the kitchen before I even made it downstairs. He was barefoot, hair still damp from the shower, dressed in sweatpants and a navy tee that looked worn in all the right ways. He stood at the counter, focused, pressing down on the plunger of my old French press, one I hadn't touched in years. "Didn't think anyone still knew how to use that thing," I said, stepping inside. He turned and smiled. "You taught me, remember? Back when you two lived in the apartment near Fremont." I had forgotten. Or maybe I just didn't think he'd remember. "I wasn't sure if you still drank coffee," he added. "But I made enough for both." He poured it into my favorite ceramic mug, the one David always ignored in favor of the travel tumbler. I took a sip. It was perfect. You still make it better than I do, I admitted. He gave a soft chuckle. You always say that. And just like that, we were no longer strangers under one roof. There was an ease between us, a shared memory anchoring the morning. Over the next few days, I began to notice things I hadn't in a long time. How often I walked into a room and instinctively checked if David was home, only to remember he wasn't. How quiet our dinners had become even before Ethan arrived. How much I missed being asked about my day, and actually being heard. Ethan didn't fill the silence with noise. He asked, listened, and sometimes just sat quietly nearby. It felt less like company and more like recognition. He offered to fix the hallway light David had left broken for 3 months. He helped me carry down winter blankets from the attic. And one night, while I stayed up sketching in my studio, he knocked lightly on the door and brought me a cup of tea, chamomile, no sugar, just how I liked it. He remembered. One evening, I found him standing alone in the backyard, staring up at the sky. Can't see stars like this in the city, he said, not turning around. You planning to move back into town? I asked. He shrugged. I don't know. I moved too much. Can't figure out where I belong. I stood beside him. The grass was damp beneath our feet. Sometimes I feel like I'm the one who stayed in one place too long, I murmured. Ethan looked at me then, just for a moment. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be, but something passed between us in that silence. Something I wasn't ready to name. The third night it rained, not just a drizzle. It came down in sheets, washing the windows in wild diagonal streaks and pounding the roof with a rhythm that felt too insistent to ignore. I stood in the kitchen with the lights dimmed low, holding a glass of red wine I had no real intention of drinking. Outside, the backyard blurred behind rivulets of water. The garden lights flickered beneath the downpour. Ethan walked in barefoot, a book tucked under his arm. His t-shirt clung to his shoulder where the rain had caught him before he made it inside. Didn't think it would come down that fast, he said, rubbing his neck. You were out there? He nodded, glancing toward the sliding door. Just needed air. Got caught in it. He leaned against the island, rain still glistening on his arm. I noticed the little things again. How his hair curled slightly when wet. How the vein in his neck pulsed subtly when he was thinking. How he never seemed to fill silence with noise like David always did. Want a towel? I offered, gesturing toward the linen closet. I'm okay, he said. Just needed to reset. I looked at him then, really looked. His eyes weren't searching, they were present. The way someone looks when they're not waiting to speak, just listening. Do you ever feel, I said, staring into the wine I still hadn't touched, like you're slowly disappearing? He didn't answer right away. And I didn't expect him to. Sometimes, he said. But I think I notice it more when I come home. That hit deeper than I expected. I exhaled long and quiet. He doesn't mean to forget me. He's just somewhere else. Do you ever tell him? No. What's the point? When someone stops hearing you, raising your voice doesn't make them listen. We stood in that soft, wounded silence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone in it. Later that night, I found myself curled on the couch with a blanket around my legs, sketchbook on my lap. Ethan was across from me, barefoot again, hoodie sleeves pushed up, a mug of tea in his hand. We weren't speaking, and we didn't need to. I drew without purpose lines, curves, vague outlines of a face I hadn't fully imagined yet. Felt familiar. Soothing. You always sketch women, Ethan noted, voice low, not judgmental. I guess I do, I replied. I think I'm trying to find parts of myself I lost. He tilted his head. Are you in those drawings? Sometimes. Sometimes I draw the woman I wanted to become. That made him go quiet for a moment. She's beautiful, he said softly. You don't even know what she looks like. I didn't mean the drawing. My pencil stilled. He didn't smile, didn't backpedal. He just held my gaze, not with challenge but with truth. The kind of truth you whisper only when you know it won't echo. I looked away. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the rain, the house creaking gently under its weight. David's side of the bed felt colder than usual. I reached toward it out of instinct, not longing, and found only the smooth, unwrinkled sheet where no one had lain. I got up and walked downstairs, not even bothering with slippers. Ethan was in the kitchen again, this time facing the window. The rain had quieted to a mist, and the warm glow from the stovetop light cast a golden hue across the tile. He turned when I entered, surprised. Couldn't sleep? He asked. I shook my head. He poured hot water into 2 mugs and handed me one. Chamomile. Again. It's like you know exactly what I need, I said. I pay attention. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. We stood there, holding our mugs, too close to be called distant. His arm brushed mine as he leaned back against the counter. Do you ever wish you could go back? I asked, not even sure what I meant. Go back where? To the moment before everything started to feel faded. Ethan thought for a second, then shook his head. I think I wish I'd looked harder at the moments I didn't know were important at the time. I don't want to go back. I just want to feel awake again. That sentence. I just want to feel awake again. It sank into my ribs and stayed there. The following day was quieter. I spent most of the morning in the studio, finishing a commission I'd been avoiding. But I couldn't focus. Every time I touched my pencil to paper, my thoughts wandered to Ethan, to his words, his presence, his stillness. At lunch, he left a note on the counter. Gone for a walk. You needed the house to yourself today. You think louder when it's quiet. I stood there holding that note, and something broke in me. Not from pain, but from the rare, fragile feeling of being understood. That evening, we cooked dinner together without deciding to. He opened the fridge while I chopped vegetables. I stirred sauce while he sautéed mushrooms. At one point, we reached for the same spoon, our hands touching. Neither of us pulled away. He glanced up. I didn't. I couldn't. You okay? He asked gently. No, I whispered. And that's the scariest part. I've gotten used to not being okay. He stepped back respectfully but still close. You don't have to be alone in that. After dinner, we sat on the floor by the fireplace, the last embers glowing red. I told him about my paintings that never sold, about the gallery show that never happened because David forgot the application deadline. I told him how silence became a habit in our marriage, not because we were angry, but because we stopped trying. I don't want you to think I'm here to replace what you lost, Ethan said quietly. But I see you. And I think you deserve more than invisibility. That broke me, not in a loud way. In the way an old wound opens, not to bleed but to finally air out. I closed my eyes. For the first time in years I felt seen, and dangerously close to something I wasn't ready for. By the 5th day, I began to dread the sound of my phone. David had been calling less, texting even less than that. I told myself he was just busy, just distracted with meetings and hotel banquets and long cab rides through the wind-chilled streets of Chicago. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore if it was distraction or disinterest. Don't wait up, one of his messages read. Running late. You know how these client dinners go. No, I miss you. No, how's the house? No, how are you? I didn't know when it had started. But somewhere between year 7 and year 10, David had stopped seeing me as something to come home to, and more like something that would always be there no matter how far he drifted. And yet, this wasn't about David, not anymore. Ethan had moved through the house like a quiet tide, present, attentive, warm, but never overstepping. Not once. Still, I had started noticing things. His toothbrush beside mine. His folded hoodie on the back of the chair I usually read in. His scent lingering in the hallway after his shower. These small traces shouldn't have mattered, but they did. That evening, I was in the laundry room folding towels when he appeared in the doorway, holding a small stack of his clothes. "Didn't mean to sneak up," he said softly. "I was going to toss these in." "You're fine," I replied. "I was just finishing up." I reached out to take the bundle from him, but our fingers brushed again, bare skin against bare skin. Neither of us flinched. His hand lingered just a moment too long. We both noticed. He let go. "Claire," he said, voice low, as if unsure whether to finish the sentence. "Don't," I said gently. Not in rejection, but in quiet restraint. He nodded. I folded his shirt slowly, smoothing the collar down more than it needed. My hands trembled slightly. That night I couldn't eat. Dinner sat untouched on my plate while Ethan picked at his slowly. The air between us was different now, not tense but fragile, like a mirror too close to cracking. "He's back tomorrow, right?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," I said. Late afternoon. The thought of David walking through that door made something twist in my stomach. Not excitement, not comfort, just uncertainty. "You okay with that?" Ethan's voice was careful. I looked up at him, my heart quietly screaming. "I don't know." We didn't speak for a while. Later that night, I found myself downstairs again, pacing softly in the dimly lit living room. The fireplace had long gone cold. Rain tapped gently on the windows. And in that hush, I heard his footsteps behind me. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stood in the doorway, watching me with a kind of quiet that wrapped around my nerves like a bomb. "I keep trying to tell myself this isn't real," I whispered. "What isn't?" "Whatever's happening between us. That maybe I'm just starved for attention. That maybe I'm making this up in my head." Ethan stepped closer. "Claire," he said softly, "you're not imagining this. But you haven't done anything wrong, haven't I?" I turned to face him. "What would you call this? This tension? This pull?" He didn't answer, because we both knew. I took a step back. "You should go to bed." "Yeah," he said, eyes searching mine. "I should." But neither of us moved. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was thick, charged, alive. And for one heartbeat too long, we stood inches apart, breathing the same breath. If either of us had leaned in even slightly, there would have been no turning back. But we didn't. We just stood there. Then he nodded once, turned, and walked away. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning felt unreal. I dressed early, made coffee I didn't drink, wandered the house like a guest in my own life. David would be back by evening. Everything would reset, revert, disappear. By noon, Ethan began packing. I passed by the guest room and saw him folding his clothes with quiet precision, stacking his books back into his duffel. His sketchpad sat open on the nightstand. An unfinished drawing of a woman looking out a window, her face turned just enough that you couldn't see her eyes. It took me a moment to realize she was me. When he came downstairs, duffel slung over one shoulder, our eyes met in the entryway. "You don't have to go right away," I said, voice barely audible. "I know," he replied, "but I think